We don't have any introductions, do we? Do we have any announcements?
No, I don't.
I'm not even going to call for it then.
Chair's too low.
Okay. It looks like we're still getting some folks on, so we will start as soon as that kind of ends. Lots of interest. That's excellent. Are you scrolling?
I am.
Okay. Oh, I'm so glad you could do that.
Mm-hmm. Looks like we have all the presenters.
We're just scrolling here to be sure that all the presenters have been able to log on. Nobody puts their affiliation. Thank you to all of you who put your affiliation. One 260-221. What is that? That's not a whole phone number. 1-260-222-3928. Who would that be? Who would have a number 126 and then other numbers? Who would that be? Just out of curiosity. Okay. Ready? All right. Let me open this meeting, workshop meeting of the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. Good morning to you all. Thank you very much for joining us today. This is a very complex presentation of a very important and thankful partnership for this land area of the flood system, the Yolo Bypass Cache Slough Complex. My name is Jane Dolan. I'm the president of the board, so I welcome you all. And I'm not going to explain the workshop. We'll wait till we get that agenda item. Ruth Darling of the Flood Board staff will be the moderator, facilitator of the lengthy presentation, very informative presentation today. So let me ask Ryan Jones to call the roll to determine if there is a quorum of the board. Mr. Jones?
Board Member Griego?
Here.
Board Member Johnson?
I'm here. Good morning, everybody.
Board Member Ramirez?
Good morning. Here.
Board Member Valines is running late. Board Member Countryman?
Present. Good morning.
And President Dolan.
I'm here. We have 5 board members present. We have one that we expect just a little bit late in the start, and we have 1 vacancy. So as we always do, we begin to just see if anyone has a very brief public comment not associated with this agenda item of the workshop. Does anyone wish to say something briefly? I'm going to count to 3 to see if there's a hand up, and that's always helpful to put a hand up if you want to talk. Okay, I see none. We're all here for the workshop. Thank you all. So this is the Yolo Bypass Cache Slough Partnership presentation. This group has been in existence for a few years. 15 official members of this partnership, the federal government, state government, and local entities, all agreeing to work together to define a vision for this. So I'm going to turn this moderation of the meeting over to Ruth Darling of the Flood Board staff to introduce the item and then proceed with each presenter's time. Are you ready, Ms. Darling?
Yes, thank you, President Dolan.
Oh, thank you.
Ryan, would you mind pulling up the PowerPoint? Great, thank you. So welcome everyone. My name is Ruth Darling. I am the manager of the Flood Planning and Programs branch for the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. And before I dive in, I hate to call out anyone specifically, but Misty Coltrider with Solano County, are you on the line?
Ruth, this is Christine. We just got an email. Let me check it.
Okay, she's a presenter, so I just wanted to make sure we had everyone lined up for today. So while we figure that out, I'll just dive in a little bit. So today's workshop will focus on the Yolo Bypass Cash Loop Partnership and the partnership efforts on advancing its goals and objectives over the last several years. Next slide, please, Ryan. So I'll start off with a welcome and introductions and sort of plate up what the presentation will be about today. So next slide. So the number of presenters and the coordination that went into the planning of this workshop is a testament to the collaboration that has been underway by the partnership as a whole in the last several years. So I would just like to start off by thanking all the staff that helped organize and plan today's workshop, as well as the consultants and their ongoing support. So this slide is an indication of the workshop outline and who you will hear from today. Next slide, please. So our workshop objectives for today. So we will provide an update on the Yolo Bypass Cash Loop Partnership and Program. You will hear a bit of history on how the partnership came to be and the partnership's vision and goals for an integrated landscape within the region. You will be introduced to our initial development of a draft master plan for the Yolo Bypass Cash Loop program, as well as its alignment with the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan and other local regional planning documents. We will plate up the partnership's collaboration and alignment efforts and introduce a preliminary approach to a governance framework for the partnership. Local partnership representatives will present on the partnership's importance to local interests. We will introduce to you our communication and outreach efforts. And the partnership has a new website that we would like to showcase to you today. We will also present on the environmental review process for the master plan and describe the upcoming notification processes for initiating environmental analysis through the California Environmental Quality Act. So there will be pauses after each sections for questions and comments, and there will be a poll at the end of the presentation to learn a little bit more about our audience today and any questions or concerns regarding the presentation and what we've described. And then we will open it up for discussion and comment. Next slide, please. So as many of you are aware, the Yolo Bypass encompasses a diverse 59,000 acre landscape. It's a 40-mile long flood risk management facility that protects the lives and property across the Sacramento metropolitan region. It's home to approximately 44,000 acres of productive farmland in Yolo and Solano counties. It's also the location of the North Bay Aqueduct, the intake for the drinking water supply, serving approximately 500,000 people in the cities of Napa and Solano counties. It includes the 16,000 acre Vic Fazio wildlife area, which provides habitat for a diverse array of birds, fish, and other wildlife species. And it offers multiple recreational opportunities while preserving scenic and open space. The Yolo Bypass Cache region is a microcosm of challenges and opportunities facing water managers and planners around California. It's a diverse collection of federal, state, and local interests. While planning efforts have historically focused on single-purpose projects, the Yolo Bypass Cache Loop Partnership is a novel effort to develop an integrated landscape with local, state, and federal interests considered and advanced together. A guiding principle of the partnership is all boats rise. That is, not one interest or agency goal is advanced at the expense of another. Agency partners in the region share a multi-benefit vision for their collective efforts to improve the ability of the region's landscape to support a wide variety of public values. This workshop is also an effort to describe how better interagency relationships, increased collaboration, transparency, and a willingness to look beyond our own needs can translate into a more efficient program and project delivery. The partnership is emblematic of this ideology. Next slide, please. So we're here today to let you know about our activities since we last convened on the partnership. So we presented to the board at a board workshop in November of 2020. This workshop can be viewed at a link on our new partnership website. This was a 4-hour workshop that was content heavy, that dived into the culmination of the partnership, a bit of history on how we got here. It also described barrier issues and potential solutions to advancing planning efforts, as well as implementation of multi-benefit actions within the region. So if you want more background, you are welcome to click on that link on our website and view that video. We are also hoping that our communication and engagement and outreach will re-engage interest in our efforts of the partnership. We are working on a master plan and we are initiating environmental documents. So we want to inform you about that. And we have a new website, as I stated earlier, and you will hear more about that later in the presentation. You will hear from a few of our partners, as well as local representatives of the partnership, and we will also have an opportunity for open discussion. Next slide, please. So I want to introduce Felix Young with the United States Army Corps of Engineers for Section 2. Felix?
Thank you, Ruth. Good morning, President Dolan, members of the board, and all the participants in today's workshop. It's wonderful to see more than 100 participants signed in today. Actually, we're above 110 now at this point. So to set the stage for the discussion today, I want, and particularly for those folks who have not been following the Yolo Bypass Cache Loop Partnership closely, I want to take a moment to outline the impetus behind everything we are doing here. I will define the partnership further in just a few moments, but there's a reason behind this makeup and why we have all decided to hone in on this region. To start, this footprint is where we find the key components of the Sacramento River Flood Control Project. And that project obviously has protected this region for over 100 years. But there is an increasing recognition and awareness that the sole purpose of flood control does not address and speak to all the dynamics and needs that have developed in water resources management since the project's inception. For many years now, we have had interested parties at all levels and from very different perspectives coming in and seeing the potential of this region, not only for flood, but also for ecosystem restoration, water resources management, recreation, and also balancing a tradition of agriculture in the same communities. That is why when this idea came together, we saw multiple federal, state, and local entities deciding to work together and think about this future in a more integrated and coordinated way. Let me see. Could I ask Ryan to please advance the slide? Thank you. So I've already gone through some of the key points already, but let me be clear about flood. Flood risk management will continue to play a crucial role in this discussion. The Central Valley Flood Protection Plan at the state level has also been very consistent about discussing improving flood conveyance in the bypass. But at the same time, as you hear from myself and others along the slate of presenters, you hear further details during about the fact that there's now time to take a more integrated and cross-discipline approach manifested in a range of projects that have either begun or if actively being planned or have been proposed by various entities. Next slide, please. So with the recognition that we need to take a broader and more expansive approach, 15 federal, state, and local agencies came together in early 2016, signed onto a memorandum of understanding that was spearheaded by the California Natural Resources Agency at that time. The overarching goal was to work with one another to find and establish those priorities, overcome the silos that have created policy differences and implementation barriers among us, and also bring about a more programmatic, multi-benefit vision for this region. So on the screen here, you are seeing a quick glimpse of the partnership agencies in the MOU. I will also want to quickly note that the West Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency, West SAFCA, has been an active participant since the initial signing of the MOU. Next slide. So what does the MOU represent, and what did and what has it continued, and what has it continued to achieve for us? I think first and foremost, it established a basis for the partners to engage systematically and constructively with one another. We committed to engaging with each other's concerns while respecting the very different policy, legal, and regulatory frameworks that still govern how we do things on our own and fulfill our respective missions. There is also a major component about listening to the voices who are closest to the ground, and those are our local partners, the municipalities, the county officials, farmers, etc. The ongoing discussion between the partnership entities has been about the public benefits that ought to be honored or achieved. Flood, of course, as I said, remains a key matter, but there are also other pillars of public benefits that are wrapped into this vision that we are all trying to construct together. Next slide. At this time, our vision, working together with all the partners, has coalesced into about 6 main pillars as noted on the screen here. They are all part of collaborative planning for a really vibrant future for the region's residents, businesses, and ecosystem, and we think it's achievable. On the next slide, I will explain each of these pillars in a little bit more detail. Next slide. As we've talked about, it's about achieving integration, coordination, collaboration, and ultimately resulting in a range of regional and system-based benefits. So first of all, flood, being in the footprint of the Sacramento Flood Control Project, as we said, this will remain a key pillar. We're talking about expanding flood conveyance capacity, but also longer term in building out these features, also trying to find a sustainable and economically feasible way to operate and maintain them. Going on to ecosystem restoration, habitat improvement and enhancement goals of functions are certainly not new to this area. We have seen very innovative projects to support, for example, the growth cycles of salmonids and nourish migratory birds that naturally fly through this area every year. This is about both quality and quantity of habitat, and to also align the environmental outcomes with land uses in a sustainable and resilient way, especially when we're confronting the very urgent realities of climate change. We also talk about water quality to minimize discharges and production of toxic contaminants. We discuss how to reduce impacts, for example, of aquatic vegetation near the water intakes as well. And protecting water quality also means protecting our water supply. We want to work with our partners to determine how these projects could maintain or even enhance resiliency and reliability of our water supply. I mentioned a little bit in passing earlier that the region has very vibrant agricultural purposes, historically and even now in the present. And we want to engage with the community throughout our project life cycles and keep agricultural sustainability in the picture as we plan and implement different types of projects in the region. There are also discussions about regulatory frameworks and assurances for agricultural diversions, just to make sure that those are sustained. And last but not least, we also want to increase opportunities for recreation as well. Outdoor education, outreach, and provide access to local communities. We know these spaces are valuable. We have seen how the public clamors for these spaces over the last few years. And so it's highly important that we keep recreation in mind as one of the 6 pillars in all of this. I also want to say that partnership engagement underlies all of the policy pillars I've just outlined. The Yolo Bypass Cash Loop Partnership has a communications and engagement arm now, and those actions represent regional engagement, thinking through not only the immediate term, but through the lifespan of the partnership, but of the benefits that the plan and its associated projects are hoping to achieve. So in order to achieve these goals, we still continue to believe that enhancing, improving our engagement in this region is going to be very critical. So that's why later in today's workshop, we will talk about some of the outreach structures that we have already built and we will continue to build out as we engage more and more of you. At this time, I'm happy to take any questions before we move into the next section.
Okay, we're pausing here to see if anyone has a question or a comment on this first part of the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Young. That was always informative, and having USACE, as you call yourselves, as a key partner is essential. Okay, I see.
President Owen.
Yes. So Ruth, we're ready to move on.
Okay, thank you. Ed Ryan, can you advance the slide? And then one more time, please. And with that, I'd like to introduce Mary Jimenez with the Department of Water Resources. Mary?
Good morning, everyone. This is Mary Jimenez with DWR. Thank you very much, Ruth Darling, Felix Young, for kicking things off for us this morning. Pleased to be here to update the board on where we're at developing a master plan for the Yolo Bypass Cash Loop complex. Next slide, please. So the reason for doing a master plan for the Yolo Bypass Cash Loop complex is really to support implementation. And more specifically, support implementation of our Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, including conservation strategy for the state of California, but also supporting implementation of the Lower Sacramento River Delta North Regional Flood Management Plan and Corridor Management Framework, and all the hard work that has gone into those efforts and moving forward together. Next slide, please. And so more specifically, with respect to the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, as the board is aware, multi-benefit expansion of the Yolo bypass has been included in the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan since the first plan in 2012. We added additional details and updated recommendations in 2017, and we're continuing to work together through 2022 to update those recommendations. They do include the body of work that goes into additional scientific detail in the conservation strategy as well. That body of work is also being updated in 2022, associated with the CVFPB. And last, but certainly not least, the work that we're undertaking and ahead of us is an important way to strengthen alignment between the CVFPB and flood management investments with other state efforts that are occurring in the bypass. Next slide, please. And so implementation of the CVFPB. So at its heart is implementation and recommendation of investments and policies. So with respect to the policies, we have the flood management policy issues that are included in the CVFPB, a whole array of them that we are seeking to address moving forward in order to support more effective implementation of our flood plan over time. And so you'll see a display of those on the slide that are included in the draft 2022 flood plan update as we have it now and are continuing to work through in 2022. An array of issues related to flood and ecosystem performance accounting, operations and maintenance of the flood system, development of multi-benefit projects, governance and institutional support, strengthening coordination with federal agencies such as the Corps of Engineers that Felix is well supporting today, and then driving towards improved climate change and flood system resilience specific to this region. So a lot of opportunities ahead of us to improve implementation of the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, address multiple key policy issues in this region that are near and dear to not only the heart of the state of California, but our federal and local partners as well. Next slide, please. And so in recent times, we also, as the board is aware, have some recent state legislation that was passed in September of 2021. That Senate Bill 369 formally endorsed the Yolo Bypass Partnership and its role in projects planning and implementation, including a number of topics related to the pillars of the partnership that Felix covered not too long ago. And so this state legislation gives additional focus and direction to support our continued development of this master plan for the Yolo Bypass Cash Flow Partnership. Next slide, please. And there was also companion federal legislation that was included in the Water Resources Development Act of 2020 relating to the work that we're undertaking. That federal legislation authorized a comprehensive feasibility study for the Yolo Bypass Cash Flow region that includes system-wide analyses of the Yolo Bypass program and more. It also acknowledged, endorsed, and formalized federal participation in the Yolo Bypass Cash Flow for project planning and implementation. So very important milestones. Just in the last several months, we now have companion state and federal legislation supporting our work. Next slide, please. And so developing a master plan for the Yolo Bypass Cash Flow complex. We have a number of key elements that we're developing in support of this effort. I wanted to give a nod to the fact sheet that our team has developed that I believe is included in the board's packet today. Also available to the public and everybody participating, that gives a little more detail on these key elements as we're developing them. So everywhere from program management, and that piece ties particularly to the ongoing governance discussions that Eric Nagy will discuss more about today, across a number of elements, all the way down to supporting data and information and tools and recommendations to support the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers comprehensive study that would be conducted pursuant to the federal legislation that I just mentioned. Next slide, please. And the master plan itself is envisioned to be a programmatic framework. So a little bit about more what that means. The master plan that we're developing will create an additional detail that doesn't exist in the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan itself. So we need to move down a level in elevation, so to speak, to create a programmatic framework and additional detail that can provide meaningful guidance for project planning and implementation. We also are developing additional detail to be able to track meaningful progress towards our goals and providing benefits as they align with the 6 pillars of the partnership that Felix mentioned in his part of the presentation. And also more detailed and updated recommendations for fostering collaboration and coordination across our various agencies and interests. That has been very challenging in the past, continues to be, but this is meant to help us continue to work through that with additional specificity. So next slide, please. And so to develop the master plan, we have to work through a number of complex planning assumptions. You'll see a few listed here on the slide. Beginning with planning for an array of potential future projects. So looking forward, what types of projects does this master plan need to support? A large array and portfolio of both single and multi-benefit projects throughout the landscape, small and large scale, physical and non-physical type actions. So think broad portfolio, broad array, and this needs to occur over time. It also is inclusive not only to support potential future capital projects, but what we're calling multi-benefit operations and maintenance on long-term management as well, being inclusive in this plan and upfront. So by multi-benefit operations maintenance, we mean not only operations and maintenance activities that are required and critical to maintain the flood function of our facility, but also multi-benefit operations and maintenance activities associated with existing and new habitat areas that may be created, for instance, and also sustaining the agricultural operations. So I think Felix mentioned this as well, that are critical in the flood system to not only maintain the flood capacity that we need to maintain moving forward and maintain and improve moving forward as projects are implemented, but also the importance to the local regional economy and agriculture as a whole. We are assuming that implementation will need to be phased. And I know this is not new to the board and many others as well, with such a complex array of activities that need to be implemented to achieve the vision. All of this work will need to be phased because it will not be all done in one shot. So we are developing information that will further detail and substantiate our ability to phase this work over time. So that's an important part of what we're trying to do in this master plan. We also need to detail out shared responsibilities between local, state, and federal partners in all of this. That, as you're aware, is not a straightforward activity necessarily, but it is something we're gonna work towards better defining and detailing in this master plan as we draft it. Next slide, please. And so just a really quick overview of our schedule and an update. We are working to prepare an administrative draft of the master plan and a programmatic environmental document for early next year. Megan Giolini with the Flood Board staff will speak more to the programmatic environmental document later on today. And then all of that will be reviewed and updated so we can produce a public draft later in 2023. Next slide, please. And so with that, I'll pause for questions and comments. Thanks again, Ruth and Felix and everyone for having me this morning.
Thank you. Always good to hear from you, Ms. Mary. At this point, we'll pause to see if there are any comments or questions on this so far. Please know that there is extensive information to come. Nope, don't see any. Ms. Darling, we can proceed.
Great, thank you, President Dolan. Section 4 will be covered by Eric Nagy. Eric Nagy's with the Lower Sacramento Delta North Regional Flood Management Plan. He's also a consultant that has helped extensively on the partnership, as well as the topics he'll cover today with regional alignment and governance. And then in this section, we will also hear from our local partners. We will hear from Misty Coltrider with Solano County. We will also hear from Melanie Saucier with SAFCA, the Sacramento Area Flood Control Association, and then Dale Crossley with RD 2068. So with that, I will turn it over to Eric.
Thank you, Ruth. It's a real honor to have the opportunity to present today on this topic. As Ruth indicated, I've been a consultant to the Lower Sacramento Delta North region since 2014 and have really also had the privilege of managing many of the activities of the Yolo Bypass Cash Loop Partnership since before the Memorandum of Understanding was signed in 2016. My charge today is to update the group on the activities of the Yolo Bypass Cash Loop Partnership over the last 12 to 18 months. Some really exciting work has been done during that period of time, and to talk a little bit about where we're headed, and then also to discuss how those activities relate to some other companion efforts in the region. Next slide, please. So the Yolo Bypass Cash Loop Partnership, was really formed around, and Felix talked about this some, to really increase awareness, to increase engagement, to increase collaboration within this landscape. There are many activities, plans, projects, initiatives that have played out or are playing out in this landscape, and it was just recognized at the time, around the time that the MOU was drafted and executed, that we really needed to foster an increase in collaboration and coordination around issues that are common to many of these initiatives. And in forming the partnership, really what was created was an opportunity to increase interagency planning. The partnership itself acts in a voluntary or on a voluntary basis. Nobody is compelled to be at the table. Everybody has chosen to sit at the table. And in that voluntary space, there's the ad hoc ability to coordinate amongst the 15 federal, state, and local agencies that participate regularly. The structure that has evolved to sort of foster that communication and collaboration is outlined here on this slide. We have an executive committee that it has been a little bit of time since the executive committee has met. Though there have been 3 of those meetings to date, the last one being December of 2018, but we are hoping to reconvene that executive group as early as June of this year. What has been very active are the next 3 levels of this structure. The steering committee, which is comprised of a representative from each signatory agency, meets on a monthly basis and provides oversight over all of the activities of the partnership. This group, as I said, meets on a monthly basis and regularly hears updates from the activities that are being undertaken by the coordinating committee or by the broad array of work groups that have been formed to deal with many of the issues that exist in the space that we're talking about today, the Yolo Bypass Cash Slough Complex. The coordinating committee is a subset or a subcommittee, if you will, of the steering committee, and it is really the group that offers the day-to-day direction and management of partnership activities. It's the group that sort of decides priorities for the partnership and tees up those priorities for steering committee consideration. The work groups are really where all of the true business of the partnership happens. These are interagency, interdisciplinary teams of professionals that are tackling all types of issues associated with all of the pillars that have been identified as important to the partnership. Some of those initiatives are identified on this slide. I think a couple that I'd like to sort of highlight, certainly the expanded communication there at the bottom, that's a big part of this workshop and something that is being discussed and something that the partnership has recognized that we need to do a better job of, both internal, not just fostering that internal communication and coordination, but also expanding it to a broader audience. Also, the topic that Mary just covered in detail, the master plan development, this relates back to that, one of those founding concepts for the partnership, which was, having a better forum within which to do interagency planning and sort of joint planning, if you will. And the master plan serves as a really key example of that. And then the third item that I'd highlight and that I'll talk about in the next couple slides is the importance of evaluating the partnership's governance model and updating it or refreshing it to better reflect where collectively the partnership member agencies would like to head in the future. Next slide, please. So on that topic of governance, in September of last year, I made a presentation to the Partnership Steering Committee, and it was really a call to action. It was a reflection of the work that had been accomplished through the first 4 or 5 years of the partnership, and then really some provocative questions to the steering committee about where we wanted to head. Where did we want to go? What did we want to accomplish? And did we feel like we could accomplish the things that are outlined in the partnership's vision document based on the way that we were currently operating and structured. And I think, the sort of fundamental question to the group was, can we realize this landscape scale multi-benefit vision as currently organized? Well, through that presentation, we had I think a really robust discussion around what would be necessary to actually accomplish that multi-benefit landscape scale vision for the Yolo bypass cash loop complex. And there was definitely recognition that the way that the partnership has operated for the last 4 or 5 years is not the way it should continue to operate in order to accomplish or make, accelerated progress towards that vision. And so what came out of that meeting was a decision to form a governance work group, and for that governance work group to spend, hopefully only 4, but it's ended up being closer to 6 months, identifying and developing a new interim governance framework to propose to the steering committee and ultimately to the executive committee for endorsement. This governance work group was comprised of approximately 8 of the 15 agencies, and this work group really did roll up its sleeves. This wasn't any type of rubber stamp affair where a consultant drafts some document and everybody just looks at it and says, hey, sounds good, let's pass it on. These were agency representatives that worked from October through February and met 2 to 3 times a month, usually 3 times a month on average through the holidays, sort of actually putting pen to paper and contributing to a joint interim governance framework that could be considered for implementation by the partnership. Some of the key items are on this slide in terms of principles. What are the governance principles that we wanted to emphasize? And I think you see a lot of words here that are reflective and have already been used throughout the presentations today as it relates to the partnership and the work that's being done in the Yolo bypass. And that's transparency, being proactive, being accountable, alignment, increasing alignment, and building trust. It is important to state, though, that the governance work was not intended to be a permanent governance model or the final governance model. It was really intended to serve as a transition model, if you will, for the partnership or a means to test a different governance framework than was previously used. In recognizing that it's an interim framework, we really decided that we wouldn't try to solve all the governance issues that 15 member agencies need to wrestle with, that we would really select some priorities to focus on initially. And then once, if we could reach agreement on those, then perhaps we would move on to some of the other governance topics. The priorities that we selected for this interim framework are listed here on this slide. And I think really key among them, and one that really hasn't been talked about to this point, is the importance really of having an issue resolution process. I think the one challenge that the partnership has maybe not been able to address as well as I think was hoped when the partnership was formed was avoiding some of the project level issues and challenges that we still see in the Yolo bypass, not being able to resolve issues at a project level. And I think that's something that we're trying to recognize in this revised governance model and to address in a more head-on type manner. Next slide, please. So what are the sort of the key points that have come out of this interim governance framework, which was presented as recently as the end of February to the steering committee for the first time in full? Some of the key focal points in that policy or in that framework include how we view member agency participation. I think it's become important for us to realize that one size does not fit all. Each member agency, should have the ability to engage in partnership activities based on the priorities of the agency at the time, based on the interest of the agency in the Yolo bypass at the time, and based on their resource constraints. It's maybe not reasonable to assume that everybody participates at the same level, as each agency sort of wrestles with the year-to-year, month-to-month changes in priorities that are, understandably changing across the landscape and across an agency's interests. The second item is resourcing, that accomplishing the types of goals and targets that are identified in the partnership vision document, that's hard work, and it takes the dedication of key team members, and it takes a complete team in order to realize those types of goals and to accomplish those targets. And there's a very clear recognition in the interim governance framework that we have to look at resourcing the partnership differently. One of the key concepts for interest, or for example, related to this is the concept of hiring a regional coordinator, a full-time position that would serve, at the pleasure of the partnership, and essentially be dedicated to operating day-to-day on partnership priorities, initiatives, and serving to help improve communication amongst the agencies and with various project proponents around accomplishing those partnership goals. The next topic here, funding, and it's really, can we accelerate progress towards achieving goals through increased investment? Currently, the activities that occur within the bypass are budgeted independently through independent agencies. There's really not any coordination of budgeting, cross-cut budgeting, if you will. And so it's really difficult to understand if there's an opportunity to achieve bigger outcomes with coordinated funding. And so recommendation that's made as part of the interim governance framework is to look at ways to not just perhaps fund and support common elements of a partnership program that are beneficial to all the member agencies, but also to coordinate funding for the purposes of accelerating project delivery. And then finally, and this is a topic that's been discussed a couple of times already today, it's communication, that we really need to cast a broader net. It's a real testament that 15 member agencies agreed to sign an MOU and operate in this collaborative space on a voluntary basis. But there are many, many other agencies and many, many other interested parties that have that care about the Yolo bypass and cash slough complex and have an interest in the work that goes on in that landscape. And as a partnership, it's I think increasingly viewed as a responsibility of the partnership to do better in terms of coordinating and communicating across a broader audience. Next slide. I think maybe before I get into this regional flood management planning slide, which is really a lead into our local agency partner presentations, maybe I should pause and see if there are any questions or discussion that anybody wants to have around the recent partnership activities and the interim governance framework.
Thank you, Mr. Nagy, for that overview. You know that our esteemed past president, Bill Edgar, was very concerned and promoting moving toward how decision-making is done, which we're calling governance. So please know the board considers that a priority and will assist. And you certainly have outlined the needs for that going forward. I also want to report that Board Member Valines did join us about more than 10 minutes ago. So welcome. So are there questions on this presentation so far? A lot to absorb. And I will note that at this point, we have 121 folks online. So you're right, there's broad interest. That's about what comes to the board. Okay, I see none. So I think we're ready to absorb more information. Please proceed.
Thank you, President Dolan. So as I started out, the Lower Sacramento Delta North region has been key, has engaged closely in this effort from the very beginning. The very first regional flood management plan published by the region in July of 2014, had a special section that was added kind of at the last minute that was called Integrated Water Management Planning. And it was really through that couple of pages that was sort of slipped into the RFMP at the last minute that I think a lot of interest coalesced around this focus on the need to focus on the Yolo bypass cash slough complex, because there was so much activity happening in what seemed to be kind of a chaotic or somewhat uncoordinated way. And it was really the region that, tried to start to create a vision for how this integrated water management planning could occur through the drafting of and publication of the Corridor Management Framework, which Mary mentioned as part of her presentation. And this really was it was produced from a local or regional perspective, but it wasn't done without contemplating what would also be important from the state and federal perspective. And so it was a locally developed or regionally developed document that really looked at all of these different water resource objectives and how they could come together, under what set of principles could they come together and make progress at the same time in this landscape. After publication of the Corridor Management Framework, several, I guess 5 member agencies of the partnership are coincident with member agencies that participate actively in the region. And so there's a real close nexus between the region and the partnership as it relates to not just strategic planning, but all the activities that are going on in the Yolo bypass cash slough region. And that partnership continues today, that interest, that engagement continues today. And so with that, what we thought would make sense to do is to have several of those regional representatives provide, sort of their perspectives, their individual agency perspectives on the importance of the Yolo bypass and why they see participation in the partnership and in these activities as important to their agency and their agency's missions. And so we have 3 presentations lined up today. The first of those is my friend Misty Coltrider from Solano County, and she will present first. So next slide, please. Misty, you out there?
Yep. Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, perfect. Awesome.
It's all you.
Okay. Next slide, please. So President Dolan, thank you, and board members, thank you for letting me participate today and present on behalf of local agencies and primarily local county agencies. And my name is Misty Coltrider. I'm Water and Natural Resources Program Manager for Solano County. And some of my comments today were coordinated with Yolo County. So I want to thank Yolo County for allowing me to provide a local perspective on the Yolo bypass partnership. Now, please note that since Yolo County is not part of this presentation today, they have provided additional, they may have additional goals and priorities that I do not mention. But as you have heard through others today so far in this workshop, this marks another milestone of the ever-evolving coordination between federal, state, and local partners, which have come together under the Yolo bypass cash slough partnership. And the MOU, the sign between these 15 agency partners, combined with the recently passed legislation to create the Yolo bypass cash slough multi-benefit program, I had to read that, will establish a common vision for the region founded on the concept that all boats must rise. Now, all boats must rise must sound like a cliche to some, but in this instance, it represents a very serious commitment to respecting existing local land uses, recognizing local agency authority, and civic responsibility to guide at the local level, and a joint commitment to improve outcomes for flood control, habitat conservation, ag sustainability to benefit the region and the state as a whole. This task is not easy, but the partner agencies must balance competing demands of the numerous interested agencies in the dynamic changing environment of the Yolo bypass. But I believe we're up for the task. So today, I'm going to focus my comments on three main areas: the importance of the partnership to local agencies, how Solano County has engaged in the partnership, and the local agency goals for the partnership. So Ryan, next slide, please. So first, I will briefly outline the importance of the partnership to the local agencies. So Solano County signed the original MOU because of the desire to work collaboratively with state and federal government to address local impacts from proposed state and federal projects to help bring attention to local issues associated with agricultural sustainability and flood protection. Solano County also understands its role in helping achieve the statewide goals for flood protection and habitat conservation, but wants to ensure that all progress toward these important goals reflect Solano County's longstanding work toward directing growth to the cities and protect agricultural and open space. The following are specific reasons the partnership is important to local agencies. First, ensure new multi-benefit projects minimize impacts on and advance efforts to sustain agricultural economy. Within the Yolo bypass cash flow, Solano County and Yolo County have maintained and supported and protected agricultural activities. Delta agricultural is an important component to each county's overall economy. And second, ensure rural communities receive funding for these important infrastructure projects. Responsible land use and planning in Solano County and Yolo County has concentrated growth in the cities, but has left rural counties with insufficient resources for construction and maintenance of important public works projects such as roads, levees, and other services needed to sustain the rural communities and the agricultural economy, as being the primary industry in these rural areas. Third, ensure the state efforts to advance the Yolo bypass partnership goals recognize the local agencies' ongoing contribution to important statewide goals. Solano and Yolo County's responsible land use planning, which is consistent with the state's plan principles set out in California law, helps to achieve otherwise statewide goals not considered by the partnership, such as reducing greenhouse gas emissions by lowering vehicle mileage, and maintaining important food supply as one of the richest agricultural regions in the nation. So Solano and Yolo County are leaders in implementing smart growth planning principles and supported by agricultural community sustainability and open space. It is encapsulated in general plans and policies. These policies support directing growth to the cities, as I mentioned, and maintaining agricultural and open space uses, as well as prevention of non-agricultural and conflicting land uses. Yolo County's reasons for partnership participation are very similar in Solano counties, as both counties have focused responsible land use planning and agricultural sustainability and open space conservation. But of course, we have more to add to this discussion. Next slide. So my second area of focus today is Solano County's extensive engagement in the development of the partnership. Since Solano County signed the MOU, Solano County Supervisor Vasquez has participated in meetings organized for elected officials, as well as engaged exclusively with staff. He is also joined by former Supervisor Skip Thompson and now Supervisor Mitch Mashburn. County staff has participated in partnership work groups related in agricultural sustainability, water supply, and multiple other work groups, as well as provided input on the governance proposal that Eric has laid out today. The county provides local agency voice on important issues, such as providing assurances for maintaining adequate water supply, as multi-benefit projects improve habitat and increase populations of endangered fish species in the Cache Slough region. To provide these assurances, the county, local agencies, landowners are collaborating with the Department of Water Resources on a habitat conservation plan, an HCP, to provide take protection under the state and federal Endangered Species Act for 70 existing water supply intakes in the Cache Slough region. So although the partnership has delivered some benefits over the years, there's other opportunities for improvements. And these include, as Eric kind of alluded to a little bit, hiring a coordinator to ensure work groups are staffed and key deliverables move forward. Solano County supports a recent proposal to hire a single staff person or team in coordinating work groups and delivering important work products. A full-time coordinator will help increase efficiency and effectiveness by providing a single point of contact for all priority areas and a single person responsible for developing agendas, meeting summaries, managing resources, and seeking input from partner agencies. And another idea or suggestion is streamlining the work group process. Partnership would benefit for a structure with fewer work groups, each of which would cover multiple topics. Such structure would allow local government staff to engage in more subject matters. Solano County would like to participate in the discussion of all these priority areas, for example, but there are currently about 13 work groups or ad hoc groups that are currently counted and about 6 priority areas, and staff time is just too limited to participate in all of these great efforts. Next slide, please. Okay. And third, I'd like to focus my comments on local agency goals for the partnership and involving in the Yolo Bypass multi-benefit program. So the loss of agricultural land and the habitat project strain an ability of local agencies to provide essential services for the ability of the farmers to sustain their operations, which provide food, jobs, habitat through wildlife-friendly agricultural practices. Local agencies' goals for the partnership include the following: regional evaluation of proposed state and federal multi-benefit projects. This evaluation will help determine how cumulative impacts for these proposed state and federal projects will impact local infrastructure funding and the agricultural sustainability economy. Wildlife Agency commitment to timely completion of the Cache Slough Habitat Conservation Plan. HDPs are complex, so high-level commitment of wildlife agencies to both resolve issues and review documents in a timely manner is critical to success. The Cache Slough Complex HCP is currently behind schedule and over budget to complete as a result of lack of wildlife agencies' prioritization and effort to necessarily complete. We look forward to working with the agencies to forward this very important project, to move it forward on a timely basis. Community engagement protocol. The partnership should develop a community engagement protocol to guide development of every multi-benefit project. The protocol would include a stakeholder process with early and frequent collaboration between project proponents, neighboring landowners, reclamation districts, local agencies, and others to identify upfront issues and develop coordinated project designs that minimize regional impacts. This type of community engagement would result in true multi-benefit projects, which can include federal funding and local agency priorities, as well as state and federal priorities. Restoration and floodplain projects could be coordinated, for example, with neighboring levee mitigation work for beneficial reuse of levee fill material. And finally, development of a funding strategy. Partnership should include a list of actions in this master plan that is being developed and prioritize these actions and develop a 3 to 5 year funding strategy that provides a realistic assessment of how each priority action will be funded, whether through state, federal grants, ongoing contribution, local agency funding, or a combination. The funding strategy should also include assessment of ongoing operations and maintenance funding needs. So thank you for the opportunity to provide this local agency perspective on the Yolo Bypass Partnership and associated multi-benefit program. Solano County looks forward to working with you and the state and developing a robust master plan to implement priority actions and ensure improved outcomes for flood control, habitat, conservation, and sustainability to benefit the region and the state as a whole. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Sika to talk about some regional perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Misty. My name is Melanie Saucier, and I'm with SAFCA, which is the Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency. And just a quick little background about SAFCA, our role in the region is to help with responsibilities for planning and implementation of major capital flood control projects in the Sacramento area by providing the local cost share to support construction of those projects. And we're currently working on several large projects in the region to address seepage and stability, erosion, flood conveyance, and to be overall more resilient to climate variability that we're seeing. And that includes everywhere from the Natomas levee system to expanding the Sacramento Weir bypass, the Folsom Dam raise, and we're also working with our partners, the Corps and DWR, on constructing the American River Common Features project currently. Next slide, please, Ryan. So SAFCA's, like I said, working on the higher level of flood protection in the region. And we're also working to be as aligned as possible as we can with the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan and the goals for multi-benefit projects in the region. But our key focus is on meeting that 200-year level of flood protection for urban areas by 2025 and reducing the overall urban flood risk to the region. And for Yolo in particular, we're working very closely with the Corps of Engineers to further the federal interest in the Yolo bypass system through the comprehensive study and the federal authorization that Mary mentioned earlier. And we're also working on a floodplain management services agreement to work directly with the Corps to explore policy challenges that have potentially impeded a more comprehensive approach to looking at benefits and justifications of projects in the region. So some of the topics that we're working on involve climate change, life safety, maximizing those economic benefits for the Yolo bypass region, agricultural stewardship, and long-term operations and management of the system, which are all very key issues that have challenges, but we think have opportunities as well to be resolved. And overall, the importance of the partnership to the local community and our agency in the region, we really see it as helping to address those barrier issues and difficulties by serving as a way to coordinate over 30 different projects in a confined area and looking at the benefits and the collaborative efforts of all those projects and how they coordinate together to improve the overall outcomes. And then we also see the partnership as helping to achieve those outcomes that Eric mentioned and others in the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, the Lower Sacramento Delta North region, and the Corridor Management Framework. So there's been a lot of plans and efforts over the years, and we really see this now as a great opportunity to implement those plans and move forward and have these desired outcomes that focus on the benefits that we can find through the visioning, through the master plan, but also have those funding mechanisms that we're lacking currently that would help actually further that implementation. And then also addressing the long-term operations and maintenance through additional funding sources. Next slide, please, Ryan. So lastly, this is just a visual graphic of kind of the main primary activities that we're engaged in throughout the different sectors of the Yolo bypass system. We're working on the comprehensive study, as I mentioned, that would be executed by the Corps. It is authorized currently through WRDA 2020. State and SAFCA have our cost share ready to go. We are just waiting on federal appropriations to further that. And we really see that as, flood control being a primary purpose, but knowing that other benefits and other components should also be studied through that comprehensive plan. And then that second column, the partnership, this has been going on for several years, and we're really excited to be working with Eric and others on this governance framework that's being drafted. We're excited to get that in front of the executives, hopefully this summer, and have some further discussion and implementation of that framework. And then, we really see the partnership as this mechanism to help coordinate these activities and help further the master plan, which is that last column where, we see this as our way of helping participate along with the local agencies. We're really excited to be a part of that and providing that ongoing feedback and input into the development of the master plan, to kind of use that as a way to facilitate project implementation and permitting for all the different activities in the region through that phased approach that Mary mentioned also. So I wanted to thank everybody for the time today and the opportunity to have the locals' perspective and engagement in this process. And so we're excited to move from that planning level to the implementation and execution of these projects. So thank you. And I believe, Dale, you're going to go next from RD 2068.
Yeah, thank you very much, Melanie. This is Dale Crossley with Reclamation 2068. I'm a board of trustee there. I've been there for quite a few years. One of the things I'd like to first say is thank you very much, President Dolan and the members of the board, as well as the partnership for everything we've done up to this point. One of the things I will have to apologize is I'm in the middle of Davis. And I first thought it would be good to go in the coffee shop where it should be quiet, but then it was too loud. So I came outside and it's just as loud. And then I figured out there's a reason, by golly, why restoration projects, habitat projects, or recreational projects need to be out in the country. There's too many people here. It's too loud. So I kind of had a little epiphany about that. Pretty interesting. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to give you guys a brief history, and I don't know how to do this because there's thousands and thousands of pages written on this, of the history of the Yolo bypass and actually how we got here today. So if you go back to 41, when what's his name? Sutter Fort started building, and then we had the Gold Rush started building, and then we had Sacramento started to get going. We had massive floods in the area, and it came from originally from 10,000 years ago, where the basin was, Yolo Basin was one of two that was below sea level in some parts, and for a perfect place for great freshwater marshes. However, the problem is nobody could pass them to get to Sacramento or to get up to the Gold Hills, so everybody started to have to build levees, state and federal. Got together and we built levees. There's about 1,100 miles of levees and continuous operations and maintenance on them every single day. Landscape inside and along the Yolo bypass is still primarily agricultural, fields and pastures surrounded by waterways. It still floods regularly as it was designed to do. The land supports both a place to grow crops and a place for fisheries and wild habitat. What's interesting is back in the 80s, we did have original homestead acts where properties like mine, I can go back to my title and it actually says it was homesteaded. Then they started saying, well, we'll stop the homesteads and sell land for 640 acres for $1 an acre. So it was interesting how the whole process started to move into more agriculture and drying up actually some of the fresh delta areas for agricultural use. Next slide, please. I don't know if I hit it off there, and I hope I covered it in that little small area, but it's hard to do. But that's kind of how we got here today. We have levees and we have the Yolo Bypass Cache Slough. And with that, we formed a partnership. Is important for bring all 15 partnerships together. And it was really for one thing, to get everything done. We wanted projects to get done. We wanted to have a say in the way projects were on each level of the partnership. We want restored ecosystem function because, again, really it was taken away way back in the early days. Flood reduction, because we do have issues with, of course, flood, as Yolo Bypass is basically where most of the flood water goes. Healthier water quality. We do have issues. Yolo Bypass in the Cache Slough area has some of the worst water quality issues around. Access to recreation. There's so much abundance of recreation. It's absolutely amazing how much fun you can have out there. from all different types, reliable water supply. And then one of the most things important to us at RD 2068 and also everybody in the Yolo bypass area is to have a sustainable agricultural economy. Everything works together if we all work together. Next slide, if we could, please. So RD 28, I'll start that over. RD 2068's involvement in the Yolo bypass partnership has been extremely involved for years, working with the state and federal agencies as well as independently active in the lower Sacramento Delta North and the Yolo bypass corridor. In 2068, in 2012, we actually started working with the whole process. And in 2016, we signed the MOU agreement along with 14 other state and federal and local agencies. And again, we did this as a way for everybody to work together and get things done, so we could get away from all the disagreements or all the arguments that we had back and forth. Next slide, please. I hope it's not too noisy. Can we get the next slide, please?
You're there, Dale.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't see it. So I'll just say the partnership is a true multi-benefit approach to the success that integrates projects within the Yolo bypass and cash slough region. The fundamental approach of the partnership is predicted on better integrating and leveraging existing interagency interaction in the Yolo bypass and this cash slough area. So really, that's the whole goal of the partnership, is let's all work together. Let's all try and figure out how to make this thing work and get it along where we have agricultural sustainability still there and everything else. We are also involved in, I kind of mixed up on the slide, so sorry. We are also involved in the partnership at all the levels. We try to be, especially on the work groups, vision document. We help put that together. Agricultural Sustainability Committee, the Government's Committee, Communications and Engagements, and Water Assurance committees. We are also on all three levels of the Executive and Steering Committee and the Coordinating Committee. So we try to be as involved as we can because we want to be part of the whole process. Next slide, please. And again, it comes back to one thing. We need to build trust between all the agencies, local, county, state, federal. We need to figure out how to deal with conflict resolution and not have lawsuits tied up with every which way where all of a sudden everything gets put off for years upon years. We have the greatest people in all the agencies. We have just minds upon minds of wonderful minds that are extremely creative. And so I believe truly that we should be able to get this thing going. I've been in since the beginning. I've seen everybody work together, and I am one of the greatest proponents on making sure that this works. We also need to have that honest communication. Honest communication comes when we can build trust. And I think that is it. And so once we get all those done, we then all of a sudden get multi-benefit plans put forth and completed. And as you can see right here on the slide, we about basically have everything in the bypass you can think of, or on the sides of the bypass where we have RDs going into that portion. Next slide, please. So affirming a positive message, we believe in the balance and the stewardship of the land. RD 2068 joined the partnership to assist in getting projects done. That's really all this is about, whether flood conveyance, habitat projects, promoting agricultural sustainability for generations to come. And I think it's important generations. We have 4, 5, 6, 7 generations out there that work, that are very economically viable. And we need to keep that viability for everybody to work together and get the projects done and still keep everything going. Partnership work, when all agencies, small and big, can participate together and get results, that's our goal. And when that happens, projects get done. So that's what we're all about, is making sure this partnership keeps going at a full pace. And I'm actually wonderfully pleased on how we're doing with it. I kind of almost feel like sometimes I'm a cheerleader instead of riding a pony or a horse. For me, I am very excited about the future. Can we have the next slide, please? The partnerships are great. Just like I said, when all agencies, small and big, are able to participate together, that is our goal. And when that happens, projects get done. There's my 2 daughters and one of my tractors. As we were farming one day, another is a set of sunflowers. You know, it's just beautiful rise. But then we also have the habitats, small streams. It's just wonderful out where we live. And as like I said, one of the reasons I'm here is I can't get internet where I live very well to speak, and it's kind of down right now. Even when I went to the RD, we didn't have the internet so I could speak, and so I'm sitting in town right now. But we'll get that a little bit later. So we'll go on to the next slide. And as my dog always said, do you have any questions? Because he always looked at me questioning every time I did something. There I was feeding a bunch of cows one day.
Great, thank you, Dale. We'll
Okay.
here for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Crosley. You may not be able to see all of us. We have seen your slide. And we have heard your enthusiasm and participation. What you don't see is the faces that have set up their videos. They're all smiling at your presentation. Very much wish to comment on your synthesis of how the Delta and the bypass were created. That was a remarkable attempt. So thank you for not giving us 1,000 pages. So we certainly appreciate your participation and know how difficult it is from a rural district in the rural area. So I want all of you to know that we are more than halfway through the slides that are prepared to be presented. The next sections are on outreach engagement, coordinated permitting, environmental issues, and further discussion and questions from the partners. So let me ask for questions now. We do know that we're going to be losing board member Countryman because he has an important commitment to. And we'll take a little break after any questions that come forward at this point. Any questions or comments?
I think Brian.
Mr. Board Member Johnson?
Thank you. Thank you, President Dolan. So I just wanted to just stop here before we go on to thank you all for all this. Obviously, a lot of thought went into it. You got a very important, big effort with a lot of moving parts, and so thank you all. I have kind of a general question for any of the presenters, just to help go, from the from all of this material to hone in on the important things. And I'm wondering, I'd ask any of you to just kind of, restate or summarize what you think are the, from your perspective, maybe the most important things that the partnership has to do over the next couple of years. I imagine you might all have a list of, a short list of things that are, unsolved challenges, and you're thinking, we really haven't figured these things out yet, but if we can get those done, a lot of the rest of it falls into place. So Ruth, you can MC if you like, but otherwise just, folks speak up, get a sense of what you think is most important here.
Thank you, Brian. I'll go first, but I think it's important to hear from other presenters today. I think probably the biggest challenge right now would be the governance piece. I think that the governance piece really outlines how partnership agencies interact within the partnership in terms of things that Eric pointed out, like conflict resolution. I also think that it touches on the funding aspect and the resourcing aspect. We do know that not all partnership agencies are funded for this effort. It's essentially one of those unfunded things that, we're struggling to find funding for, and we've heard that through several of the presenters today. I think it's great that there is state and federal legislation that we can point to help have a justification for additional funding. But perhaps in the future, looking at interagency agreements to fund partnership agencies to participate in things that Misty touched on, how many work groups there are. So I'll just leave it at that. Those are two big aspects in what we deal with on day to day, working on the partnership and activities.
And Ruth, I'd like to echo that if I can. I completely agree that those are the two I think of the biggest challenges, right? Or areas to hone in on. One is the governance framework and the barrier issues that we have. Some of these large scale projects, not necessarily all boats can rise, or there's challenges around that. And we haven't yet had an example, I'd say, of a project go through the partnership and the governance framework that's being laid out and suggested to understand how we can address those issues one by one, and going down those 6 pillars and looking at where some projects have benefits to different areas and where they may not, and how can we address that comprehensively through the different parties in the partnership. And then I think the same as Ruth, the second item is really that funding piece. And some agencies, and there's a lot of time and dedication to this effort that we participate in, and some agencies may not have that level of engagement and time and commitment, but they're still interested and engaged and want to participate. And then the larger funding issue of how these projects get implemented, and we continue this partnership level effort, engaged, coordinating as often as we do, to kind of continue moving things forward. I think those are the two really of the big things to hone in on.
Thank you. I see Ms. Young is next.
Thank you. Yes. Also, the points that Ruth and Melanie have just brought up speak to. I agree. Those speak to two of the two most important operational priorities of how we work this partnership. On the substantive side, though, I also want to point out that the work that Mary, Ruth, and team are doing on the master plan, and being able to roll out and then explain which projects are we advancing and why, and in what sequence. That's a crucial content substance question to inform what exactly is the partnership working on, and how we're good, and whether those projects are the right ones to achieve the 6 pillars of public benefits that we have discussed today. So substantively, I think that the master plan and all the discussions flowing from that are going to be extremely crucial. And then on the federal side, since Board Member Johnson's question was what's important for the next 2 or 3 years, on the federal side, we will also echo some of the drive and interest in the Yolo bypass comprehensive study that was authorized, because that will also play a big role in aligning with the master plan and figuring out what does the landscape look like into the future. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I have Mr. Crosley next, and then Mary Jimenez. Mr. Crosley.
Okay, yeah, I think some of the most important things that we have to look at is getting pilot programs started. My biggest worry is the longer we go on in meetings, the more confused we get, and the more that we have to open up more work groups, and the bigger it gets and the slower it gets. I'm kind of a little biased because I have just the RD 2068 board, which is really quick to make a decision. And I never understood until recently that it takes a little while for all the other agencies to get a decision together, because they have to go through so many different departments. But I really truly feel we need to start getting boots on the ground and start doing pilot programs and start working with some of the agencies out there on some of their projects to see how this whole program is going to work, because we can put documents down and we can have strategies, but until we start the pilot programs, we really don't know how that interaction will work or how we can adjust to it to make it work so it becomes successful when we get this thing launched and we are participating fully. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding us that local government can frequently move more quickly than larger federal and state agencies, and so keep pushing. Mary Jimenez, and then we'll see if Safeka and Solano want to weigh in after that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I wanted to echo what others said about the big two, beginning with Ruth, about the importance of governance and the ability to attract broader and more sustainable funding for all of us. Those have been major challenges and continue to be. And then to add a little to what Dale said, I also see a lot of exciting potential to walk and chew gum at the same time. As we're building out this master plan together and fostering these collaborative relationships, what kind of pilots or what kinds of actions can we put into practice right now to projects that are being developed at the same time, right? They're in different stages of development, so to speak. You know, how can we work creatively in partnerships on proposed efforts and developing them together through feasibility and project level planning, for instance? So considering the broad array of activities going on, the needs of the partnership at large, how can we do both, right? You want planning to support your implementation, so how can we do that?
Safer weighed in right away, so thank you, Melanie.
Yeah,
Is that
it's Misty.
Misty? Okay, Misty, then Eric.
Yes, really quick. You know what? I just like to chime in on this one, and I agree with my other colleagues here, and key that the two main big things to move this partnership forward, and is, you know, of course, funding and alignment, and to help with that alignment, of course, is a coordinator. A coordinator will really help to try to align master planning work, all these different project work, and all these different efforts, and to look at these various pillars and to bring the partners toward, you know, what can we do? And so I really want to hone in on the need to really try to get that funded and move forward. And I think that is a really good opportunity to help us all as partners, you know, through across these multi-agencies with their objectives to move forward. So, thank you.
Thank you. Eric Nicky?
Thank you, President Dolan. Board member, I mean, I would answer the question in 2 words, and I think everything that I agree with all the comments that my colleagues made, but I think the 2 words I would use is demonstrate value. The partnership has to demonstrate value to its member agencies to be successful. There's a lot of ways that could happen. We could do it by bringing resources, by bringing more efficient decision making, by creating a collaborative space where policy issues are resolved, you know, more efficiently. But I think at the end of the day, the partnership has to figure out how to demonstrate value. And I think there's some amount of value that's been brought to bear or been brought through its accomplishments so far. But I think to continue to be you know, a venture that agencies want to participate in, they have to see how it helps them accomplish their missions.
And yeah, I hear loud and clear, coordination and coordinator is necessary. I don't see any other hands raised. Thank you, Brian, for asking that.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Good morning.
There you go.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I want to chime in on this. When I was reading this report for today's workshop, I was really interested in how this huge collaboration of folks coming together. And I really appreciate all the presenters today. I want to comment a little bit on Dale. You know, I'm kind of like you. I like the pilot project, you know, put your project to a test. And sitting on Trilla for the amount of years that I did, I'll tell you something that you're going to run up against, and that is, despite the fact that you have legislation on the state and you have recognition through the WARDA on the federal side, you're going to run up against old regulations. These, you know, a lot of these federal regulations were written back in the 70s and 80s and haven't been up to date on what creativeness is being occurred today. And so my question is this: your engagement and communication group, is that also an advocacy group? Because you're going to have to advocate for regulations to either through interpretation or being upgraded to really fit what you're trying to do here, which is very creative, and I agree with it 100%. So is that something you've had that discussion about?
Thank you, Board Member Griego. This is Ruth Darling. That's a great point. And that group is not an advocacy group yet. A lot of the advocacy that you're speaking to has been done sort of in the background with the leadership of SAFCA. So when the board and SAFCA and DWR provided comments on the implementation plan for the comprehensive study that speaks at the heart of what you're getting at on how the federal government looks at benefits. And so it's a lot of that advocacy that's sort of done at the Washington, D.C. level. SAFCA often meets with the ASA and speaks to the things that you're talking about right now. So it is a priority. And so I'll just open it up if SAFCA wants to add anything to that. But I think based on a lot of the foundational work that our local partners have done, that's really, we're trying to get there. And we're hoping through the comprehensive study and what the language says in the WRDA that we might have a pathway there.
Great, thank you.
That will be added as a priority, I'm hoping.
Yeah, that's a great point in terms of advocacy for the communication and engagement work group.
Yes.
So thank you for that.
Got to keep all the plates spinning at once. There's a lot to do. This is a very amazing presentation for important work. I don't see any other hands up. Anybody want to speak? How about a 6-minute break? We'll take a break now. Come back. All right, we're back. We're re-engaging. I'm happy to see people are still smiling and interested. We lost a few. Board member Countryman needed to leave. We'll fill him in.
So if we're ready to go, I can introduce our next section. So section 5 is our upcoming engagement opportunities. Board staff Christine Van Skyke as well as Megan Galini will present. Christine will cover communication and engagements, and Megan will cover the environmental documentation for the master plan. So with that, I'll turn it over to Christine.
All right, thank you very much. Thumbs up or my mic okay?
If you can talk a little louder.
Yeah, how's that sound? Just making sure the mic's okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Good morning, President Dolan, members of the board, and thank you all for attending. My name is Christine Van Skyke, as Ruth introduced. I'm a new program manager for the Yolo Bypass Cash Flow Partnership at the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. I'm glad to be here today. It is exciting to see over 120 people joining this workshop. We're happy to have this opportunity to engage and discuss the partnership's commitment to communicating the vision, to listening and understanding what is important, and gain feedback from our partners and those working and living in the bypass. This journey, as described by my colleagues this morning, includes important key elements that thread together all of our work, and that's communication. So getting us to this point, the legislation and the vision both focus on the importance of collaboration to develop strategies for long-term effective and fostering regional agricultural sustainability, to look at multiple benefits such as flood protection and our long-term water supply reliability. The timeline for the partnership is 10, 15, 20 years or longer. And as Felix said, through the lifespan of the benefits that we hope to achieve, we are aiming to continue engagement and communication efforts. We're in it for the long haul. We are here to reach our goals. So together, our partners at all levels, federal, state, county, and local representatives, we're passionate about what the YBCS opportunities present in this region, and we're better together. So next slide, please. For the communication and engagement portion of the partnership, Dale's picture really shows how the Yolo Bypass Cash Flow area supports the values that make California great: a thriving community and prosperous farms that depend on its clean, reliable water, visitors drawn to the abundant waterfowl, fish and wildlife that flourish, and our healthy scenic environment. It's our dynamic cities and towns and businesses that count on us to reduce that catastrophic risk for flood. So as Eric described earlier, 2022 and beyond is a completely different landscape for collaborative efforts due to the COVID pandemic. Our goal is to reignite interest, and by developing engagement methods and working to improve communication channels. The partnership has begun working on a plan for governance, as we have told you a little bit about, that includes experts from throughout the region that recognize successful collaboration, and regional planning requires this commitment to communication and coordination. As Misty mentioned, our priority developing protocols that ensure frequent and dependable communication are required to help communicate and engage as we work. Communication engagement components for the partnership is critical for multi-benefit, sustainable long-term solutions. Starting on the ground at the local level is how we find that path. Collaborative governance requires us to engage efforts as we write the master plan, and our efforts to coordinate the multi-benefit projects and vision that we do have for activities in the region, and to create a program that supports that long-term sustainable and coordinate effort that brings us all here today. We did develop a CNE work group, and we have been formed, starting by putting together this workshop and presentation. We're excited about sharing with you what's been done in the partnership, and continue to represent the partnership by developing consistent messaging, communication protocols, a platform for information sharing and dedication to working with local agencies, our tribal partners, landowners, project proponents, members of the public, and other organizations together on a long-term plan on how to make this happen. For the master plan, we will be writing a communication and engagement plan that will be an appendix to the master plan, and it will describe outreach methods, channels for communication, protocols, and engagement models such as flyers, informational briefings, presentations, and work groups like this, and other methods of communication as we continue to build the partnership. Next slide, please. Hopefully, most of you have joined us, may have received an email through our new messaging system. Yesterday, I was really proud to send the announcement that the Yolo Bypass Cash Loop Partnership website is now live. At ybcspartnership.org, you will find information about the partnership and resources to help you stay informed. We have posted documents such as the original MOU, the vision document, links to legislation, and past presentations where we were able to provide background and information on all things Yolo Bypass. In addition, there's a Get Involved page where you can find out about upcoming events and activities in the partnership, as well as sign up for our listserv. Please check it out. We do hope to keep you informed and engaged. Next slide, please. So in your inbox, you may have recently received a notice from the YBCS welcoming you. It is a new service we have subscribed to called GovDelivery. This is a secure government platform that enables us to build a list of subscribers and provide a sign-up form in order to add new subscribers. Your interest in the Central Valley, the Lower Sac Delta North effort, the board, and/or the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan provided an email to upload to the service, and you do have the opportunity to opt out, or you can add other topics of interest by following the prompts. We're glad to have you aboard, and we're proud to be able to share information in this easy to read and hopefully interesting way. It does allow us to accelerate and streamline messaging, to inform and engage you, and increase the opportunity to message to a larger audience and the community. Please share, if you would, our website and for the invitation to your broader listserv, and hopefully we can engage in even more constituents and interested parties in the region. Next slide, please. So one more interesting point to make about GovDelivery is to help support our effort with transparency and our effort to communicate and engage. The partnership will be collecting and analyzing data in most of the efforts that we are underway, including this outreach and engagement opportunity that we had through GovDelivery. So you'll see here the first welcome bulletin went to over 550 recipients, and we're able to keep track and see how we're able to better inform and provide information going forward. So this is really casting a wider net, and we hope that to grow and continue to improve as the partnership develops and proceeds. Next slide, please. Our communication and engagement efforts are going to continue to focus on our effort to expand communication, as I showed you in some of the new platforms that we have available. It's important to us to keep you informed about the drafting of the master plan. We want to continue to foster engagement and keep you abreast of opportunities to work with and learn more about the partnership. And we keep you informed about our next steps, which include outreach for CEQA and scoping. So with that, I'll hand it over to Megan Delaney to explain the CEQA and programmatic efforts. And we'll pause for questions on the seating portion after Megan. So thank you so much for your time today, and take it away, Megan.
Thank you for that information. That's great. I'm amazed you got all 530 all on one listserv. Good job.
Thank you.
So thank you, Christine, and hello to all the board members and others. My name is Megan Gelini, and I'm a senior environmental scientist at the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. And I would like to talk to you today about programmatic environmental compliance efforts for the master plan. I'll touch on 3 topics, specifically environmental analysis and documentation for the master plan, public input and engagement opportunities related to our environmental documentation efforts, and programmatic permitting efforts. Next slide, please. So one of the key components of complying with environmental regulations is to prepare environmental documents and perform an analysis of the potential impacts, be they adverse or beneficial, of the proposed plan or project. For the master plan, the Flood Board and the Army Corps of Engineers will be the lead agencies preparing these documents as required by the state's California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, and the Federal National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA. So these evaluations must take place before any of these actions or projects are undertaken. The evaluations will consider how the master plan's actions may affect resources, which resources they may impact, and the magnitude of any potential impacts. Environmental documents will describe and consider the entire action proposed. In this case, it's the master plan's potential components, as described previously by Mary. And the documents will consider feasible alternatives, cumulative impacts, and proposed minimization measures to reduce the potential adverse impacts. These environmental documents will then be released for review and comments to the public, agencies, and tribes. Preparation of the environmental documents will support 2 distinct actions. The first, these documents will support a decision on the master plan, and they will also support programmatic permitting actions related to the master plan. Then, in the future, as individual projects and actions move forward, they will be able to build on this landscape scale work when analyzing their specific project impacts. So for the next few slides, I will be focusing on CEQA because the necessary efforts for NEPA are still being determined. Next slide, please. So to share a little bit more on the CEQA process, the boxes on this slide indicate the noticing and environmental document preparation steps, and the ovals on the slide highlight the public engagement and review opportunities. So to initiate the environmental document preparation process, the Flood Board, serving as a CEQA lead agency, needs to decide to prepare a Program Environmental Impact Report, or a PEIR. Then they will send notice of that decision to the public, tribes, and relevant agencies. This notice is called a notice of preparation, and this will initiate the scoping period. And I'll provide more details on the notice of preparation and the scoping period on the next slides. So during the scoping period, comments may be provided, and then in the next step, the board will begin preparation of the draft public EIR and consider those comments in its preparation. The draft PEIR will analyze environmental benefits and impacts of the master plan, evaluate alternatives and cumulative impacts, and identify any needed mitigation measures. This programmatic analysis provides landscape-wide, broad evaluations. Once a draft PEIR is prepared and ready for public review, a notice of availability will be distributed and the public review period will begin. During the public review period, the public will have the opportunity to review the draft PEIR's analysis and provide comments. The board will hold at least one meeting to both inform the public of the key results of the environmental analysis, as well as to receive feedback on the draft PEIR. At the end of the public review period, a final PEIR will be prepared, and this document will have 3 main components: all comments received on the draft PEIR, responses to those comments, as well as any changes to the draft PEIR text as necessary. For any significant impacts identified in the PEIR, A few supplemental documents may also be prepared, such as findings that will identify how that impact was considered and, if possible, avoided or lessened. So at the end of the CEQA process, the CEQA lead agency, the board, will consider all of this information, including public comments, and then make decisions regarding if the board will certify the final PEIR as being in compliance with CEQA, approve the program as described in the final PEIR, and if it so chooses, to adopt the master plan. Next slide, please. So as I touched on previously, the scoping period is really one of the key first opportunities for engagement in the environmental documentation process. The scoping period will begin when the NOP is publicly distributed. And under CEQA, the purpose of scoping is to examine a proposed project early in the environmental analysis and review process. And it's intended to identify the range of issues pertinent to the proposed project and feasible alternatives or mitigation measures to avoid and reduce potentially significant environmental impacts. The notice of preparation will be distributed as broadly as possible and via multiple methods as outlined on this slide. And the notice of preparation will contain some preliminary information about the master plan's components and all of the necessary details on how comments and feedback may be submitted to the board. In addition, the board will host a public meeting during the scoping period to provide another opportunity for commenters to learn about the master plan, its development, and to provide comments. Next slide, please. So in addition to the public input and engagement opportunities that are built into the environmental compliance process, I wanted to also highlight tribal engagement, which is another important component in support of the planning and environmental document preparation. The board looks forward to engaging with tribal communities prior to and during the CEQA process. These engagement opportunities will include an informational meeting to introduce the upcoming master plan and related activities. And currently, board and DWR staff are actively working internally to plan this meeting. This will then be followed by more formal tribal consultation efforts in accordance with Assembly Bill 52 and the California Natural Resources Agency's tribal consultation policy. These consultation efforts will inform the development of the master plan, as well as inform the protection of cultural and tribal cultural resources. Next slide, please. So now I'd like to touch on some of the programmatic permitting efforts that are related to the master plan. So the purpose of these programmatic permitting efforts is to obtain programmatic regulatory coverage for all master plan components, including projects and the routine type, operations, maintenance, repair, rehabilitation, and replacement activities in the Yolo bypass Cashlou region. Our goal is to create a high-level framework and approach for permit approvals and to consider the cumulative landscape scale impacts of the master plan components on the performance of the flood control system. It will include evaluating elements that require Section 408 approvals. By developing programmatic permits and consistency for the covered activities, future project level permits can build off of these programmatic efforts and maximize efficiencies in costs and timing. The permitting pathways generally involve the protection of the function and capacity of the flood control system, as well as the protection of existing natural and cultural resources in the Yolo bypass Cashlou region. Permitting compliance generally involves the submittal of technical data and applications, identification of potential impacts on a landscape level, mitigation to address those impacts, and consultation efforts with state and federal resource agencies and tribes. Our master plan permitting work group is actively working together to identify potential programmatic permit compliance pathways. And with that, I'd like to transition to the next slide and our communication engagement. We'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
All right, there would be questions on the environmental work.
Yeah, both Christine and I are happy to take any questions.
Okay, great. Board Member Ramirez, is your question at this point?
Are you reading my mind, Jane? How'd you know that?
Oh, yeah. I have a little assistant sitting next to me.
Thank you, President Dolan. My question might have been partially answered just by that last slide. I was listening and thinking about the plan programmatic EIR, and then there's this programmatic EIR, and there's other EIRs in the Delta, and there's other federal projects in the Delta that I'm sure will have NEPA documents that are also sort of at this scale. And I was trying to zoom in on the purpose really for this activity, but my takeaway from what you just said is that this would be used for CEQA compliance for some of the permits that people need for some of their projects. And I think maybe the effort is to try to look at those, like you said, together to facilitate their being delivered in a way that would facilitate the projects getting done more quickly, mostly on the permitting side. Does that sound correct?
Yes, I think
that.
Sorry.
Sorry, Jen, it wasn't for you. That was for somebody, Ruth or.
Yeah, not me.
So,
go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, I would say that's generally correct. The purpose of CEQA right now is to evaluate all of the master plan's components. So that includes projects, but also operations and maintenance activities. And then the hope would be that as projects go forward and they need to do a more detailed, specific analysis of their potential, that they could potentially tier off of this PEIR or at least build on the permitting and other CEQA efforts that we've done for the broader master plan and consideration of the landscape scale.
Okay, and I'm asking in part because I think everybody's got so much bandwidth, right? And the same agencies that we need traction with for any CEQA process, including the tribes, you know, they have to be able to follow along and to keep up. And there's multiple things happening in the same footprint. And so I just wanted to make sure, I'm sure you guys have thought about this. I just wanted to sort of out loud acknowledge that it's a commitment, not just on our part to be the lead agency, but we're asking other people to make commitments. And they only have so many people themselves, right? So I know we're trying to weigh the benefit of that investment with the other things that are happening and the other priorities. I just wanted to make sure I push that button and acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Yes, good point. Lots going on in this complex area. Any other questions on this part of the presentation? I see no hands. Anyone want to turn their mic on? Then I think we can proceed.
Great, thank you, President Dolan. Our next section is for discussion purposes. So board staff Wendy Wang will take over the next 3 slides. She's going to share her screen, and we've planned a bit of an interactive poll. We wanted to get some knowledge on who has joined us today. So I'll turn it over to Wendy. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ruth. Good afternoon, everyone. We're past the 12 p.m. threshold. So I am here today to lead a quick discussion. We're going to do a little bit of polling and dive into some Q&A after that. The polling here, we have a couple of options for you to participate. The first one being, if you want to do it through your computer, I pasted a link into the chat. If you click that link, it will open up a page on your internet browser that takes you to this poll. Number 2 option is on your phone. You can type in www.menti.com, spelled MENTI. And then once you're there, type in the code 232175 76. If anyone has problems with that, feel free to just chime in through the microphone as well. So our first question today is, who are you here representing? We have a couple different options. Are you here with the feds, the state, a local agency, or perhaps you're a landowner, a consultant, a Native American tribe, or a nonprofit? So please go into the poll and check off which type of agency or entity you're here representing today. And we just wanted to get a feel for who is out there in the audience. So far, it looks like we have 34 responses. I know there's 100 or so of us, so come on, let's go, guys. I want to see 100 responses here. Who do we have in our virtual room? So far, it looks like a lot of state folks, but a pretty good number of consultant and local agencies as well, with federal not far behind. Oh, we finally got a response showing somebody is here representing an association. That's exciting. Slowly, we have our answers trickling in. So thank you everyone for responding so quickly. It's kind of cool to see the graph change as we go, right? To see who all here is with us. We finally have a nonprofit here. We're still pretty heavy on the state. Who else do we have in the room, guys?
Are you saving this?
We are, yes. We will save all these results and we can send it out with our documentation and materials afterwards. Is anyone having trouble accessing the Mentimeter poll?
Mr. Crossley, are you able to access this?
Feel free to write it in the chat too if you want to.
I'm having a little trouble myself.
No worries. If that's the case, feel free to type it into the chat, or if you can't do that either, we can always just take your feedback verbally, and then me or Christine will type it into the chat to keep an archive of who's who.
Okay, which do you want to be? Dale, what do you want to be? You want to be local? You want to be association?
I'll be local.
Be local? I think you can be more than one.
Yeah, well, I am more than local.
Okay. You're local and you're landowner?
Yes, ma'am. I'm also a landowner.
All right. We have Dale down as a local agency rep and a landowner. Thanks, Dale.
Thank you.
Anyone else having trouble with the poll? We're happy to take your feedback verbally or through the chat.
I don't see any in chat. Anyone want to verbally give it? I will admit that I finally did it, but someone gave me a tutorial yesterday.
We're at 66, and I think it's sitting about there. So maybe this is all the responses we'll get. Last chance, anyone else want to chime in? If we don't have you represented in our graph here, we're happy to take it down via chat or just through your mic.
So you don't have a part of this circle for people who are shy.
Yeah, that's correct. No shy category.
Maybe anonymous. Okay, yeah, I think that's it.
Okay. Well, very good. Thank you all for replying. This is really helpful to see who we have in the room, and we'll definitely take this into consideration as we continue on in our discussion and the rest of the poll.
It also shows who's missing, so that will assist with the outreach and engagement.
Right, absolutely. Thank you, Jane. Okay, we are going on to our second question. This is a multiple choice, but feel free to check as many of these as you think would be helpful. The question is, how can we best engage you on the master plan? So we have a couple options in the poll here. First one being outreach meetings. Do you like meeting with us? Do you think having more of these meetings would be helpful? We also have email newsletters. Do you like receiving updates through your email? If so, check that. Our third option here is website updates. Maybe you're like me, you like checking the website every now and then to see what's new and what's the upcoming events that I want to see. Website updates, if you like that, we will absolutely make sure to keep everything updated on our website. We also have an option for agency briefings. That would be if you want us to take all of our partners, a big group of us similar to this, but come to you rather than having you come to us. If that's something that you think would be helpful for your group or agency, please check that as well. And then lastly, we have an other category in case you have a great idea that we did not think of. If you have another idea of how we can engage with you and your agency, please check that other option and then submit the idea via chat, because we are all ears. We really want to hear what you have to say and what you think. And I see some of the things in chat here. For outreach, we could do surveys and focus groups. That's a really good idea. Thank you, Morgan. Any other ideas, or just continue filling out the poll? We really like seeing the results as well. So far, it looks like outreach meetings and email newsletters are a top contender, but everything is pretty desirable. So I would say we'll have to continue a lot of the good work we're already started, right, Christine? Very cool.
I would say yes as well. There's no big difference between the numbers there.
Yeah, that's really great. It's good to know that everyone appreciates all the different formats. And I know everyone's a different type of learner and communicator, so having all these different formats helps a lot in just making sure the message gets out, right, to everyone, and everyone has access to what we're working on here. Any other additional ideas that isn't these 4 we listed on screen? And if you don't want to type it in chat, you can also chime in. Just unmute yourself and let us know. All right, I think this is the answers we're going to get. So it looks like outreach meetings is our number 1. That is the best way to engage folks. But like you said, not everything else is not far behind. Everyone wants to see continued email newsletters, website updates, as well as agency briefings. So thank you all. This is very helpful. Now we are going to shift over to our final question here. And this one is a free form response, so please get as creative as you would like. The question is, what concerns should be addressed during master plan development? And this question will let you submit as many times as you want. So if you have multiple ideas, just keep on typing and submitting. Once we start getting a few responses, there will be boxes that pop up on screen and start scrolling. Perhaps an idea somebody submits will inspire you to come up with another idea. So someone submitted engagement. Thank you. That is definitely a good concern. If you have more, continue typing away. We have permitting challenges. That is definitely also a concern. What else is out there? What are folks worried about as we develop this master plan? What are your concerns and worries? So we have a worry about governance entity, funding challenges, coordination with existing plans in the area, how actions are funded, and landowner rights. Equity and community input, that's definitely very important. More governance, lots of funding. I see a lot of people are worried about funding. We also have alignment with the water resilience portfolio. That's a good one too. Let's see, land acquisition, cumulative impacts / benefits of projects. And if you see something on here that is your concern, I would say submit it again anyways, because the more times we see funding on here and we have a record of it in the future, then we'll know that there's a lot of folks worried about funding. So don't pass up on submitting an answer just because you see your response already represented on the screen here. Anything else? Let's see, how engagement, equity, North Bay Aqueduct municipal water supply resiliency, cumulative impacts and benefits of projects, that's also a concern, as well as ongoing O&M. Definitely see a lot of funding. We have 4 on screen as of right now. Let's see, long-term O&M and ownership. Another concern we have, establishing baseline to not be overly complex. That's a good one as well. See, this is a long one here. I was trying to read. How the master plan will engage and coordinate with other plans like the Delta plan and state policies. That's a good one too. Another concern, assure key stakeholders involved, define ag sustainability. Thank you for that. That's a good one. Adequate staffing. That is definitely also a concern. And in the chat, we got someone saying early engagements. That's a concern as well. Definitely early engagement, not just engagement as a whole, but we want to make sure to bring people in early enough to be a part of the process in a meaningful way, right? Let's see, we're at 45, 46 responses. Keep on going. If you have more ideas, we want to capture as much as we can in this poll, just so we have a good documentation of it. And a lot of what concerns folks share here today will help inform what we do in the future, right? Because we're still working on the master plan. We're still developing all the engagements coming up. Please submit your concerns here so we can make sure to address it as we move forward. Let's see, expediting project implementation. That's another one. Keeping the door open for federal funding opportunities. And another concern here, master plan coordination with current and planned future restoration projects and programs. That's a really good one. And how do we balance the co-equal goals within the Yolo Bypass Cash Slough region? That's a very good one too. Let's see, connectivity of projects. How do we go big enough to be climate resilient and still achieve our goals? That's also very good. Does anyone want to chime in through their mic and just say some of their concerns? Or was everyone able to access the poll or the chat?
We'd love to hear from you.
Definitely.
Do we have any chats?
No, nothing new. No chats. We saw the last one.
People are all doing this.
People are busy submitting, and thank you all. This is really great. We have 57 responses so far. This is super helpful.
Yeah. Someone said all are good, so I would,
Great.
yeah, I would add to that.
Definitely.
All right. Well, the partnership can take all these and put them in some kind of cohesion.
Oh, we definitely will. Yeah, we can report back on this and take this as data and report back on priorities and really is helping us. I can see Mary smiling. It's helping to inform us exactly what we were hoping to do today as we start on this master plan adventure. Thank you so much, y'all, for submitting.
Well, thank you for putting this together. Usually, I don't like putting Post-its on the wall, and this is a much better way for everyone to say what they want without, sorry, I'm going to just be bold, without taking up a whole lot of time.
Right.
This is, this is the best little website interaction I've seen in a while.
I'm really glad you like it. And thanks for that comment, Mary. Yes, this is definitely a very broad and comprehensive list. Super helpful. And we really appreciate everyone chiming in like this. Having all these different minds together on this one question, it'll really help us make sure we have coverage of everything, right? Versus just what like me, Christine, Megan, and Ruth are thinking about. So this is great. We're at 60 responses now. Does anyone else have anything to say? You're seeing a lot of ideas on screen. Did it inspire you to think of anything else? Feel free to chime in, chat, submit some more.
It does seem that early engagement, communication, really high priority. So obviously the partnership has indicated what's necessary for that to occur. Coordinating projects, act in bold, funding. How many times did that come up?
A lot of people are worried about funding, or it's one person who's very, very, very worried about funding.
No, it's big. So, federal and state agencies got to pay attention to that. Things can't happen without resources.
Absolutely.
And this does not happen with big sales.
Yeah.
Very true. And we have a few other things in chat that came in. Morgan, thank you for supporting this type of brainstorm. I really like using Menti as well. So if anyone has questions on using Mentimeter in the future, please feel free to reach out to us. We also have additional submittals through chat saying funding. Yet another person very worried about funding. And then another concern of all participating partnerships working together. That's a good one. Another one submitted on chat is protection of agricultural sustainability. Definitely a good concern. And then let's see from Misty here. Also a concern is defining how the master plan aligns with local priorities and policies. Also a very important one.
We won't go forward unless that's respected.
Definitely. All right, I'm going to give another about 30 seconds here. Do we have any additional ideas folks want to submit either through our Mentimeter poll or through the chat or again, open up your mic. You are more than welcome to chime in. I got one more here from chat. The importance of getting the HCP, getting that implemented. That's definitely a good one too.
It would appear, Dale, that you figured out how to do that. Good for you.
All right, this is looking really great. So.
I can't get back to you. I just did. Sorry. This thing's hard.
Yeah, it's hard to juggle it all, isn't it?
Well, thank you all so much for participating. It really means a lot. This is what communication looks like, and it's inspiring.
All right, so we'll keep all of this documented. We really appreciate all your responses. And at this point, I am going to hand it back over to Ryan for screen share here so that we can continue on with our presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. That was well done.
Thank you, Ryan. This is Ruth Darling again with the Flood Board. So we just have a couple slides left. We wanted to open it up for questions and discussion. And then I'll recap the workshop. I'll discuss key takeaways and what's next, and then we'll close. So President Dolan, if you want to request questions and discussion, I'll hand it back to you.
All right, thank you. I just had to pause there and absorb all of this presentation. Thank you. Very comprehensive, a lot to think about, a lot to take away so that we can continue to communicate with you all. So at this point, if you have something that you want to add, a question that you have, a discussion item to bring forward, first I would ask if any board members wish to add, comment, or question. I don't know how to call on you in order, so put your hand up if you do. Brian, Mary Jane, Tim, Mike. Okay, you're being polite. You want others. It seems to me that that Menti, with everyone putting it up, really did the job. So anyone else wish to offer a comment, ask a question? I don't see any hands, so turn your mic on if you want to. Nothing in the chat. Yeah. I think I will say on behalf of right now, close to 100 people still, participants still with us, thank you. Okay.
Okay, I think we can advance to the next slide, Ryan. Okay, so just to recap on some key takeaways. Thank you again for all the presenters. I think we've heard some valuable information today, some of which is that the partnership, working together, we're better collectively in tackling the task ahead of us in terms of the master plan, the governance, as well as prioritizing proposed projects within the region and our environmental documentation process. We're working together on drafting a master plan, being transparent in that process. We have thought that the master plan will likely be a living document and perhaps updated every so often. This will allow folks that are within the region interested with the master plan and what's going on within the Yolo Bypass Cash Flow area to continually provide input on the vision of the future of the bypass. We will stay connected, update, and informed. We have our website. Please get involved on our website. We have an email address. Send us emails if you want more information or if you have any comments or ideas. We are expanding our communication to include regional and local agency, as well as Native American tribes, landowners, and other interested parties. And we will inform you on our progress, including upcoming engagement opportunities, as well as our environmental scoping process. Next slide. So our immediate upcoming milestones will be centered around CEQA, our scoping meetings once the notice of preparation is released, as well as environmental document reviews. We will be conducting tribal consultation, and there will be a public review of the draft master plan. Mary touched on that schedule. That will be next year, but we did get feedback on how best to engage you all. And so we will take that into consideration and work on planning future engagement and communication activities. Next slide, please. So just a big thank you again to everyone that helped put this workshop together, our local partners, consultants, and here is additional our website, our email address, and ways you can join our listserv, and also a recording of today's workshop. So with that, thank you very much. I'll turn it back to President Dolan.
So the 2.5-hour workshop recording will be on YouTube. Anybody
That's right. The board's YouTube channel.
Minute TikTok on that. No, that's great, and certainly the recording will help to identify the issues that really were emphasized today. But thank you, Ruth Darling, and your team. A remarkable job to put together so much information on this amazing, complex project in a cohesive way. Very appreciated. Are there any closing remarks that anyone wishes to make? I think we're ready to adjourn. Unless someone says, no, we're not. Okay.
Nothing new in the chat.
Okay, nothing new in the chat. Don't see any hands. Thank you all for joining today. Clearly the interest and participation in this is very broad, and we appreciate everyone taking the time. So thanks, board members. Thanks, staff. Our workshop is now adjourned.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Yeah, have a great weekend. Thanks, Jane. Thanks, everybody.